everybody, I'm Rich Lewis and welcome to the first episode of You've Only Come to Hear United, presented by Off Your Soccer. Now, I've been a Manchester United fan for around 30 to 35 years, and my first strong memory of United has been made to miss the 94 FA Cup final on TV to go to a birthday party I did not want to go to. My mum made me. My dad promised to record the game. Forgot to press record until half time. However, as I'm sure people of a certain age all remember, luckily all the good stuff came in the second 45 minutes, including those two Cantona penalties. It's been difficult putting together an Off Your Soccer pod without wanting to just make it all about United. So I thought I would join the countless number of pods and YouTube channels out there doing just that, and just have a show to focus, purely on, to borrow from the utterly brilliant alternative MUFC on X, the mighty Manchester Matchday Reds. I'm looking forward to the comms from the first game of the season against Fulham. I'm hoping some are going to come out for the Community Shield. If you haven't checked out his work, it's fantastic. Where have you been? Anyway, let's see what we have coming up for you today. So, we'll be looking at Aaron Wan-Bissaka's impending move, the impending arrivals of Mazraoui and De Ligt, squad numbers, and what's going on with squad numbers this season. We're going to have a look at where we feel the squad still needs to be strengthened. Obviously, we're going to look back at the Community Shield, look ahead to Fulham after that too. Have a quick nose at what's going on with Wayne Rooney at Plymouth, and have a quick chat just before we finish off about the third kit being released tomorrow. So, starting with Wan-Bissaka, I know we've talked about the move on a pod previously. It looks like that's going to happen now. He's been with United for the past several years. He's been quite a reliable player. You know what you're going to get from him. You also know what you're not going to get from him. Excellent in one-on-ones. That's not news to anybody. If you need a man to do a job against, as we saw last season against Mo Salah, he's going to do that for you. At the same time, you did feel like he could get lost from crosses quite easily. If you saw a replay and you're looking at Wan-Bissaka and thinking, what are you doing? That wasn't unusual. Going forwards, you always wanted more from him as well. It's always kind of weird when you think that he's a winger who's been converted. At Palace, he was a winger converted to a fullback, because you just can't see where he would have been a winger in the first place. And his attacking movements, he looks quite awkward. He can get past players. He's got speed and he has got some skill. But obviously, when you're looking at the Premier League level and you're thinking, he was a winger coming through at the academy, it's hard to put those things together, because going forward is where he needed to improve. And I think he has improved, but just not enough to be what Manchester United need him to be. I've often thought with Wan-Bissaka, could you be used as a defensive midfielder and putting your sort of or to the right side as centre back and putting those tackling skills to better use? But then you think, okay, well, have you got the positional awareness and ability to be able to do that? I think there's probably been things we could have tried with him which haven't happened, and what's also not been useful for him and other players who've been there now over the last several years, including like Victor Lindelof being another great example, is players who've had to play under multiple managers, which cannot have helped his development. Having to learn multiple different tactics and ways of playing, it must have kind of messed with him a little bit. He's been in and out of the team too. So you're looking at this situation now where he's 26 years old and making the move to West Ham, and you look at that thinking from the age we signed him, that you would have hoped you'd be looking back on his United career and he would have done a lot more with us. It's not to say he's been a bad player, he's been a good player, but we wanted so much more. He will be missed, but I think that will be restricted to certain big games against opponents where we'd like him there to have done a job on somebody. But I think throughout the course of the season he won't be. I think if we can get Mazraoui in from Bayern Munich and keep him fit. He's a much more direct player, much more positive player going forwards. I think it's what the team needs at this moment in time. If he stays fit, because we know Mazraoui's had his injury problems too, I think people will, and obviously this sounds quite blunt, and it's not meant to sound that way, but I think people will forget about Wan-Bissaka quite quickly. So speaking of Mazraoui and Matthijs de Ligt as well, the medicals are due tomorrow. Mazraoui's, I believe that may be held up a little bit purely down to the fact that the news broke today that Wan-Bissaka's medical was delayed. I think there's still some minor details to be sorted out regarding the exit package for Wan-Bissaka. But we'll see what comes of that over the next sort of 24, 48 hours. I'm sure we'll hear something from the ever-reliable Fabrizio Romano with David Ornstein. The move of de Ligt in particular, I think it's very exciting. You're looking at someone who now has... You can look at it in different ways, but... And yeah, okay, you could go, well, why has it not worked out at Juventus and Bayern Munich? But by the same token, he's played a lot of games for both teams. He's only 24 years old still. Bayern Munich fans started a petition to stop de Ligt from moving. He's still highly rated by the fan base there. Yes, he's sort of slipped down in the pecking order, and you look at the likes of Upamecano and Kim, who seem to have been their preferred options, which I find crazy. I've watched Bayern a number of times, and I'm so glad we didn't sign Upamecano. He just often looks like an accident waiting to happen. He's not a bad defender. He can be fantastic, but if I had to choose out of Bayern's current defenders which one we'd have, it would definitely be de Ligt. I think people sometimes get too wrapped up in the idea of a perfect defender. If you were to go back and look at many of Vidic and Ferdinand's games, you'd see mistakes in there. It's just, and I think it's the nature of being a centre-back. What you want to do, obviously, is be able to have the sort of presence to minimise those mistakes and for them to not be the first thing that springs to people's minds. I think it's something that Harry Maguire's always struggled to do. Maybe that's partly down to the way he plays football and presents himself on the pitch. It doesn't look quite aesthetically pleasing at times. And from looking at videos of de Ligt, I think he is slightly more aesthetically pleasing than Maguire. But it wouldn't surprise me if he does get a little bit of that stick along the way. I think people might be, who've not seen him play a lot, might be thinking we're getting a very classy operator coming in, a bit of a Rolls Royce of a player. I think there may be some misconceptions there, and actually I think if you were to look at a Vidic or Ferdinand comparison, I think you're probably looking more at the Vidic out of the two, but a Vidic with a beautiful pass on him and an ability to be quite progressive on the ball, which sounds phenomenal to me. So I'm very interested to see how he does for us, and I've got my fingers crossed that he might be making his debut potentially for us against Fulham, but we'll come on to that later because there's some decisions to be made there. But just looking at our main options at centre-back for next season in de Ligt, Martinez and Yoro, it feels like a relief compared to what we had going into last season. We've done some excellent business in the transfer window. I think things are looking much more positive from a defensive perspective. There are still some issues to iron out at left back. We'll have a little chat about Harry Mass at some point later on. But I think we're getting there now, looking at that sort of area of the team. I think we're feeling a lot more confident. Obviously, injuries are always going to play a part in how we perceive our backline, as we've had to learn the hard way over a number of years now. I believe I may have mentioned already, but if not, we're looking at, from if reports are to be believed, medicals tomorrow for Mazraoui and de Ligt. So hopefully we'll get something announced in the next 2 or 3 days. Mazraoui is a slightly more complicated situation. I'm sure he'll be on standby. That might be put back potentially a day purely because of the Wan-Bissaka situation, his medical that was due to take place at 4 o'clock today being delayed. But looking at reports from Ornstein and Romano, there's nothing sinister going on there by the sounds of things. It's just a delay where they're just trying to sort out some I think some sort of financial bits and bobs, but it looks like that's going to be fine, and it's going to go through okay. Now, squad numbers. We've seen a few changes this summer. Nothing too major. Some of the younger players have been upgraded, but the reason I put this in here is you look at some of the younger players or players further down the list, and you got to wonder why they're not taking higher numbers. I know it's not seen in the same way these days as it used to be. I know that, for example, you look at Foden at Man City. I think he's 47 there, and I think he's tried to make that almost his thing. It was a number he was given quite early on. But for me, just for a lot of players in a lot of situations, I'm not buying this. I'm going to make this shirt my own. I like the idea, but for me, take the responsibility. If a shirt number's 3, that's in that sort of 1 to 25 area. Obviously, of course, in that first sort of 1 to 11, I think you should be asking for that shirt. You should be taking on that responsibility. I understood why, for example, Tony Valencia, once he'd been given the number 7, wanted to go back to 25. And he felt the weight of that shirt there. But generally, you've got to be pushing to go, I am Manchester United's number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. You know, and Luke Shaw wanted to be 23. He was briefly number 3 for us. It didn't sit right with him. If that's what you want to do, fine. But I like the attitude of Rasmus Højlund, for example, saying, give me the number 9 shirt. Bruno Fernandes, as soon as he could, I'm number 8, give me the number 8. And I think that applies through to, I think, you know, you've got even the shirt numbers such as 21 and 23 of a level of popularity with them in more recent years. So I understand that to a degree. But when you start getting in the higher ups, I just think even in the eyes of fans, you can start putting, it doesn't apply to all players, I know, but in the eyes of a lot of fans, you're almost saying to yourself, I am purely a squad player. I almost think with Scott McTominay, for example, if he'd have gone, when certain numbers have become available, now I want that number. Number 4, for example, is a great, you know, example of a vacant shirt, which I think there are some players in the squad that they could have pushed for that. You know, obviously, sometimes it's associated with a centre-back, but more often than not, you'll see centre midfielders using it. Obviously, we had Sophie Amrabat wearing number 4 last season. I did wonder, there were pictures of Kobbie Mainoo in training when he came back without a shirt number, and it did look like at first he was going to get a new one. I probably thought number 19, which would have been once upon a time Nicky Butt's old number, seemed like a pretty good fit for him at this stage, with you know, lack of other options. You kind of, from an aesthetic perspective, you look at having the 16 shirt, which would have been Roy Keane's at one point. Well, that's Ahmad's shirt at the moment. 18, obviously, Scholes' shirt, Casemiro's got that. Bruno's obviously got the number 8 nailed down. 6 is taken at the moment, which can sort of give again a number which can flip between a centre back and a centre midfielder. So there aren't many options, but there are some options there, and I would like to have seen some players kind of moving up the pecking order. I always felt with Donny van der Beek, I know he took the number he took when he joined us for personal reasons, quite emotional reasons. It was a very nice thing that Donny did. But after that first season had passed, I kind of felt at the time it wouldn't have solved. Don't get me wrong, it wouldn't have solved these problems with what happened with us. But he seemed to be happy holding that number. But he always felt like, in part because of it, a squad player. Now this might be something specific to me. You might think I'm talking rubbish, but I think the numbers do matter, and I do find it interesting when certain managers want players to take certain numbers because it represents something, and I really do believe that's the case. It was nice to see Xerxes taking the number 11. It's not a comfortable fit when you think of it as sort of a winger's number in a way, but you are going, I'm in your 1 to 11 on that team sheet. You know, when you look at the squad overall, you look at those numbers and they do feel like key parts there. I mean, I bet it would have stung Garnacho to have not got the number 7 and watch that go to Mason Mount, which I think most United fans would agree wasn't the right choice. It wasn't the right fit. I can understand Mason Mount pushing for that shirt, because if you're joining Manchester United and you've got the chance to be the number 7 at Manchester United, you're going to want to take that. And you've got to give Mason Mount some credit there for going, I'll take that responsibility for a shirt that's been a curse to a lot of players over a number of years. So fair play to Mason Mount for taking that on. Wasn't the right decision by the club, but if I was in Mason Mount's shoes, I probably would have done the same, to be fair. That's enough of my rant on squad numbers. Let's have a look now at where do we still need to strengthen. Having made the signings we've already made, I think most fans will say, rightly so, centre midfield. If we look at the obvious options in there, we've got Casemiro, Kobbie Mainoo, and I'm going to be honest, you can think about other players who can play there for us, right? Toby Collier is probably next on that list. You can't look at Scott McTominay anymore and go, he's an option for that centre midfield area. I think we've seen now that Scott McTominay is an attacking centre midfielder. He's very much, to me, like Marouane Fellaini was at Everton. He's going to cause problems, gate crash in the box from that sort of number 10 area, or if you're playing sort of a tighter 4-3-3 than we did at times last season, you know, he can sort of spring from that sort of 2-8 sort of position and cause issues in the penalty area. That's the sort of player he is. If you're thinking we need a centre midfielder, not an attacking midfielder, he's not your man. And if you start discounting Scott McTominay from those numbers, yes, he can do a job there, but he's basically filling in. If you start discounting Scott McTominay, then we look really thin on the ground. You can bring in Toby Collier and go, okay, there we go. We've got one extra body in there, and that's fine. I'd be more than happy to see Toby Collier be a part of the first team squad next season, and obviously be able to come in if there are injuries. He's looked massively promising in pre-season. I hadn't had a chance to watch a lot of him in the academy. I don't think he's played like loads in the academy since he joined us from Brighton, to be fair. So I think he is a bit of an unknown quantity to a lot of fans. But yeah, he can definitely do a job, and he maybe within the next 2 or 3 years he could blossom into an important squad player for us. I haven't seen anything yet which suggests to me that he's going to be more than that, but you never know with time. I think Darren Fletcher, when he came into the United squad as a younger player, he wasn't necessarily seen as someone who was going to be a standout first team player, and he took a lot of criticism over the years. But by the time he left, I think people saw him in a very different way to when he came into the team. Christian Eriksen obviously is there still. It's hard not to see Christian Eriksen as a backup option now, looking at the way Ten Hag used him last season. He can definitely be brought on to split a defence, and I think then you go in, okay, so in terms of numbers, maybe there is a 4 there. And I say a 4 because if we're looking at the way we've been playing sort of the back end of last season and pre-season this year in this sort of 4-2-2-2 structure, then if you're thinking you want 2 players for each position, then you want 4 players in that central area. But that feels pretty... It feels quite weak to have Eriksen, Casemiro, Mainoo and Collier, and you haven't really got like-for-like replacements in there. You've got different skill sets, which has its benefits, but it also means that if you lose someone, you're probably going to have to tinker a bit too much with... arguably have to tinker a bit too much with the structure of the team. There's other people who can fill in back there, as we said. Scott can fill in back there, Mason Mount can fill in back there, Bruno can fill in back there. But the mantra of Ineos has been, at least when it's come to the sort of staff behind the scenes, is having the best of the best, having the best in class to fill those positions. And surely the same has to go on for on the pitch as well. Yes, you need people who can do different jobs for you, but you want the best in class in each position. You could look at it from a slightly different angle and go, okay, if we don't strengthen, is that the end of the world? Is perhaps the structure more important than the players? Yes. Based on last season, it absolutely is. You've got to get that structure right. But my point just being that you can get that structure right and have everyone closer together and not have these massive gaps that we saw appearing in midfield last season in different phases of play. But when you haven't got like-for-like replacements for players, it's great having other skill sets to change a game. But if you have something that works, if you haven't got someone who can come in and do what somebody else can do, you're going to have problems maintaining that way of playing. Yes, you need more than plan A, you need B, C, D, all the way down the alphabet if possible. But you want a strong plan A, and you want to be able to, when you need to change someone in and out, you've got someone who can do that job for you. So we definitely need more work in the rest of the window. Centre midfielder, someone in the younger Casemiro, essentially. I think is what we'd all like. But aside from midfielder, I absolutely think we need a forward. It drives me crazy, this idea of where clubs these days play with. A lot of clubs play with one striker, primarily with one striker. There's just thinking of, okay, so if they're injured, we need one more. But the thing is, if you're playing with a position where there's one player to that position, I know this is very obvious, but you lose that one player, the other guy comes in, then who's next? Ethan Wheatley, I think, would benefit a lot more from a loan than playing third fiddle, because at the end of the day, you can see what Ten Hag does in a lot of games. He does trust young players to a point. I'm not buying that if, at the moment, if Højlund and Xerxes are both out, Wheatley comes in next. I think he's going to play a false nine. I think, you're going to have Ahmad, Garnacho, Bruno, Sancho playing in that role, which is far, far from ideal. And if we are going to be playing a 4-2-2-2 system, and also it looks like he's accepted that Rashford is a left-hand side player now, and he's not in a hurry to move Rashford up front, can we not have 4 strikers? I'd love to see us. I think we're in a position now where it would make sense to do that. Obviously, we're not going to go and sign 2 more strikers in the summer with the time that's left and the options out there. It doesn't feel like a Ten Hag thing that would happen, but definitely one more. We absolutely need one more, especially when you consider that Xerxes, by his own admission, isn't a number 9. I think he's called himself a 9.5. So you lose Højlund, and you can tweak the side, but if the money's there, we may need to move somebody on first. I'd be happy with Ivan Toney, more than happy, dependent on the amount, but I'd also be happy with an experienced striker, someone to come in if the numbers are lower. Please feel free to get in touch with the show and chuck some names out there in terms of centre forwards. I think we've seen the likes of Taremi being linked with us in the past, who's gone to Inter Milan this summer, but that would have been the kind of signing which would have made sense. But we need more cover in that area of the pitch. We've seen in pre-season against Liverpool, and obviously in the Community Shield, we're lacking in terms of people who are best at putting the ball in the back of the net. Even if the rest of the game isn't great, you can even look back to when Michael Owen joined us, and he got a lot of stick, and he was injured a lot, as happens with Michael Owen. But there were still games where he came in. I think there was a Champions League game against Wolfsburg, and he scored a hat-trick. And at the time, because we were so used to doing so well, it didn't really, it didn't raise any alarm bells. Like, oh my God, this is amazing. But now, if we had a player, any player, like come in off the bench, sort of a backup player come in and score a hat-trick for us, that'd probably blow our minds right now, because we've just not had that strength and depth in our striker department for some time, unless I'm forgetting something really obvious over the past sort of 10 to 12 years, and that sort of after Ferguson period. Moving on now to the Community Shield. I've had to let the dust settle a little bit before talking about this game. It stung. You always want to say, it's not a proper game, is it really? The Charity Shield, the Community Shield, it's just a friendly. You win it, and it does always feel like a little bit more. So I haven't always carried it amongst, I wouldn't look at a manager and go, well, you won a trophy with us. David Moyes won the Charity Shield, and you look back at that and go, it doesn't feel right to say David Moyes won a trophy with us. But it is silverware at the end of the day, and it also helps keep that momentum, coming out of the back of the last season with the FA Cup. If you can go and beat City and you lift that silverware at the end, it all ties into the mentality of the players. So I think I wouldn't go as far as to call it an important game, but you definitely could have got some importance from winning that game. I don't think it can be easily dismissed. However, that's not what's going to be remembered at the end of this season. We'd have to have a a really, really mundane, boring season for us to cling on to getting a decent result against City in the Charity Shield and being annoyed that we lost it. Hopefully there are much better and brighter things to come the rest of this season. There were a few standout things that a lot of people have already commented on off the back of the game. Marcus Rashford's finishing for one was woeful. He could sound a bit harsh. On one occasion, obviously, he hit the post, but when you watch the finish back, I think it came off his shin or his ankle. You'd expect him to do a lot better, and for me, he's looked really bright in pre-season. The games I've watched, he's looked a lot sharper than he did at a lot of points last season, and I've been quite excited to see what he can bring to the team. And I'm not necessarily worried so much about his finishing from the perspective of how that's going to negatively impact the team this year, because it will. But you know Rashford's still going to score a decent amount of goals. Even when he's not at his best and his form's not there, he's still going to score a decent amount of goals. And the fact that now Ten Hag is looking at him as a left-sided player, it appears to be looking at him primarily as a left-sided player and not a forward player, hopefully takes a little bit of the pressure off him. But that only happens if we do bring in a striker to take some of the burden off him. If it doesn't, then the expectation is going to be higher that he can have a season more like the season before last. I just think Rashford's form and his finishing is more of a wide player, where it can be a bit patchy and a bit inconsistent. So it will massively help him, I think, if we can bring somebody else in just to take the pressure off him a little bit. Otherwise, there are going to be bigger eyes on him this season if he has more games like the Community Shield in front of goal. The next talking point was Harry Amas. Obviously not in the first 11, not on the bench, which seemed crazy. We were lacking defenders in the team. He'd played a lot of football in pre-season. He absolutely could have done a job in that game. It would have been a really good test for him. I understand the thinking of not wanting him looking exposed, or maybe it being seen as too big of a step for him. But the way Ten Hag had used him in pre-season had put him in a really great place to have a taste of the Community Shield. And I think now as he's set out his stall, Ten Hag, in terms of where he sees Amas, I think to give Ten Hag some credit, I think he had said in possibly after the Liverpool game, maybe before, but he commented on Amas needing probably another 3 months, I think he said, to get to a place where he might be able to come in and contribute to the first team. I think from looking at him in pre-season, there might have been some errors in there and issues, but what we ended up with, because of the shuffle round in that game, was watching Dalot get switched over to left back in the second half, Pellistri come on at right back, and then get exposed for Bernardo Silva's equaliser. And what seems crazy about that is you're then going like a 17-year-old left back isn't quite ready yet to play at left back, but a 23, 24-year-old attacking right midfielder, arguably attacking centre midfielder at times in Facundo Pellistri, is okay to come in for his first appearance of pre-season and play an unfamiliar position. I'm not seeing the thinking there. That feels purely like that's based on age rather than anything else. Maybe I'm missing something looking at it too simplistically, but surely you should be looking at if they're old enough, they're good enough, not if they're old enough and there's no one available in that position, well, they can play there and do a job for us. I don't feel like we were in emergency territory there. We weren't in Anthony at left back territory. Harry Mas could have been part of that side and done a job. So I really would like to know Ten Hag's thinking there. It wouldn't have hurt us massively to have used him and then obviously moved him back into the sort of 21, or 21s, 18s if needed, once we get players back into the team. It would have been a nice taste of first team football for him and give him something to aspire to and look forward to, going, I want a little bit more of that now. But I'm pretty sure we will see some of Harry Amas before this season's out, because he looked absolutely fantastic in pre-season. Another positive from the game, luckily there are plenty of positives. Ahmad was excellent again. He's been brilliant in pre-season. I think at times his very, very final decision when it comes to striking the ball or not striking the ball, or how he chooses to, leaves a little to be desired, but compared to Anthony, it's night and day. It really is. You look at in some of the little movements he makes and passing decisions he makes, that there's a lot of variation there. You're not looking at him thinking, oh, Ahmad's just going to chop onto his left foot. Yeah, his left foot's his stronger foot, but he's more than happy to go on the outside onto his right, or just pass the ball back, or look like he's going to pass it back and then move up, sort of push forward into the central areas and threaten in that way. He has an aura of unpredictability around him, which is massively exciting going into next season. And I hope people are patient with him when his form dips. It frustrates me looking at some of the commentary, online commentary these days, surrounding wide players in particular. There aren't many wide players that I remember growing up who are consistent. And even if you look back to some of United's famous wide players over the past 30 years or so, and you look at Giggs and you look at Beckham, Lee Sharp, Andre Kanchelskis, there's always games and spells where they dip. The coverage, though, now of players, the sort of 24/7 coverage and the ability for fans to watch nearly all the games, really exposes when a player has a bad game or a bad run of games. Well, something really simple should happen, and hasn't happened enough at Manchester United, that if you're in poor form, you just get taken out of the team. No big deal. We have a quality guy who's going to come in and replace you. So it's inevitable that it's going to happen at some point this season with Ahmad, where he's going to drop off. That's fine. He'll be back again. The quality's there. Absolutely. There's absolutely nothing to worry about at all. And similar can be said for another bright spark, and that's Alejandro Garnacho, who's just, you can just see the steady improvement in him all the time. The one thing that's just popped into my head, which, watching him in the academy, he appeared to have, and he's fast, but he appeared to have blistering pace at times in the academy. And yeah, he's still super electric, but not quite as fast as I thought he was going to look in the Premier League. That aside, that is very much nitpicking, because he's fantastic. He's very direct, very positive. Even the end of last season, when his form tailed off a little bit, and he was getting tackled a bit too easy at times, and his decision making sort of waned. I mean, he played a lot of games, consecutive games, for someone of his age. It really was his main breakthrough season last year, and he kept going. It didn't impact him in a way where he was getting overly frustrated or getting too negative about his output and looking to not have the ball. He still wanted the ball. He still wanted to make the difference. All that should have happened towards the end of last season was he should have got taken out of the team a bit earlier, and we could have used him as an impact sub as we headed into the final stretches of the season. But he looks like he's come back raring to go. He didn't play a lot for Argentina in the Copa America, but that's probably to our benefit, to be fair. He went away, had a massively positive experience, another winning experience with his teammate as well in Lisandro Martinez, and he looks raring to go for this season. The final take from the Community Shield, there's a lot you could say, but the final take for the purpose of this show was Casemiro as well, who looked reasonably solid. I think that seems to be the general consensus from pre-season, barring, I think there was one sloppy performance in there, but generally he's looking a lot sharper than last season, in better shape. I mean, I'm not sure if that's just a mindset thing from a fan perspective. When someone starts to look a bit better, it's easy to go, I think they've lost a few pounds, looking a bit trimmer. There weren't times last season when I looked at Casemiro and thought, he's put on too much weight or anything like that. He didn't look fit at times, but that was just more about being mobile and getting around the pitch, not anything to do with his physique. But he's looking more switched on, and I feel like he's had a break and been able to reset a little bit. I'm happy he's here, actually. Don't get me wrong, if we'd had the money offered to us from Saudi, it would have been hard to have turned that down, because you want to be able to reinvest in a younger model. But if anything, right now at this point in the transfer window, unless we got offered big money for him from Saudi, I'm looking for someone who can come in ahead of him and still have him here to play as a second fiddle to them, or perhaps someone who can play alongside him. We can't expect Kobbie Mainoo to play every week. There's a chance he might, looking at what happened with with himself and Garnacho last season, but he needs someone to take the burden off him. So I don't think it really answers a lot of our problems to sell Casemiro, but we do need to upgrade. So as we said earlier when we were talking about where we need to strengthen it will be interesting to see what we do heading into the last few weeks of the transfer window. Okay, next up, looking ahead to Fulham. So last season we lost 2-1 at Old Trafford to Fulham. Once upon a time it would have felt like, I can't believe I'm saying this right now, that this feels like a very common thing to say, that you could pick any team from the Premier League over the past couple of years and go, oh, we lost to them, and it doesn't really raise any alarm bells, which is strange. Like letting Bournemouth put 3 past you at Old Trafford as well, just barely registers anymore, sadly, and hopefully that's going to change after this coming season. But yeah, we lost 2-1 at Old Trafford. It was a late Iwobi goal. I think Harry Maguire got the equaliser for us in a game we were already losing to a Batty goal after some poor defending from a set piece. They caused us a lot of problems. Mooney's up front was difficult to handle. It wasn't a great day. But I think, having watched the way pre-season's gone, I still think Fulham are going to cause us some issues, but I think we're looking like a much more robust proposition this time around. Thinking of the likely team for the game, I think I don't think it's as clear cut as it could be. It wouldn't fully surprise me if he goes with basically the same team that went out for the Community Shield. I'd say Onana, Martinez, Maguire, Dalot, Casemiro, Mainu and Fernandes are dead certs. Now, Fernandes is going to be one of 4 attacking players, and then you're going to have 3 from Rashford, Mount, Garnacho and Ahmad playing with him, and I don't know how he's going to go. If it was me, it would be Mount, Garnacho and Ahmad. I think Rashford's finishing let him down too much, but I just can't see him leaving Rashford out. Then I'd go, well, he's going to leave out Mount. I think he's liking his false 2 up front, so I'm like, okay, so if he leaves out Mount, how does that work? Well, Rashford's going to come over to the left. Possibly he'll have one of Garnacho and Ahmad over on the right hand side, and the other plays sort of alongside Fernandes in a way, as a kind of false 9 in the 4-2-2-2 system. He could change the system slightly. And then again, having said that, you know, if you go with Rashford, Garnacho and Ahmad, Mount's played well in pre-season. You want to see more goal scoring output from him. You know, he's a great presser, he's hard working, he's got some great technical ability too. But one of the things that I think, primarily from when Mount went on loan from Chelsea to Derby in his young years, I think what made people stand up and take notice of him was his ability to score goals from midfield. And I think obviously with the Chelsea links there too, I think people are looking at him going, Frank Lampard, you know, he can do that. He can do that job. He can not maybe even do it for England too. And I think if he's gonna really become a player that United fans really take to, it's going to be because of his goal contributions. It's not going to be enough for him to be a 50-60 million pound player and just work really hard. And that's not a criticism of Mason Mount, because he didn't pay the fee for him, but that's what he represents to United fans. He is a player that was brought into as a sort of an elite level competition for the rest of the players. And if you're playing a support role for that sort of money, that's not going to wash, and people aren't going to be happy, even though it's not Mason Mount's fault. Even if he's playing perfectly fine, fans are going to want to see more from him, as we've seen with Anthony. If Anthony had been a 15-20 million pound signing, you know, people would have been there wouldn't have been half as much of the negative commentary out there about him. Fans would have probably still been looking for him to be moved on, thinking, oh, we'll get our money back for him, it hasn't really worked, maybe it'll work out for him somewhere else. But when you do tag that fee to a player, it does put the pressure on, because fans want to see that represented on the pitch. I found it crazy at points towards in the parts of the season where Rasmus Højlund wasn't prolific, there did seem to be an undertone of criticism from the pundits that were talking about him. Some stood up for him more, obviously, but even in the questions being posed by presenters at times, it felt mad. We were looking at someone at that age who ended up having a very good season, scoring 16 goals, but because of the fee that was attached to the signing, it was just perceived very, very differently, and the pressure's going to be on Rasmus again this season as well to go much beyond the 16 he scored last season, despite being still quite a young player. If he was someone who'd come through the ranks at United, even with the same attributes, and he'd scored 16 goals last year, that it just would be perceived very differently. The other options, or decisions that Ten Hag has got to make are at the back. It wouldn't at all surprise me if you see Martinez at left back again, Evans in the middle with Maguire and Dalot at right back. It's very, very possible. But I think what could change things is if we can get De Ligt over the line earlier in the week. It's more than plausible that Ten Hag sticks him straight into the team against Fulham alongside Maguire at the back. I still think you'll see Martinez at left back and Dalot obviously at right back, just because of our lack of left back options. I'd love for it personally. What I'd like to see at the weekend coming up, it won't happen, and maybe it's naive on my part too. Maybe it's not a good idea, but I like to see Harry and Mass at left back, De Ligt in the middle alongside Martinez with Dalot at right back. It would just make an awful lot of sense. But the fact that Mass didn't play in the Community Shield and wasn't even on the bench suggests that he's not even in the manager's thinking. I think he will be on the bench for the Fulham game because of our lack of options alongside Johnny Evans. They'll probably be our defensive options. Maybe Mazraoui. It depends if that's over the line completely. That makes it. I think there could be some delays there. The fact that the BISSAKA thing didn't happen today, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe Mazraoui has to wait until our second game of the season. It just depends how quickly things can get done over the next sort of 24 to 48 hours. But you do get the feeling that by Tuesday, Wednesday at the latest, De Ligt will be complete. If Mazraoui does come in, then I mean he's played with. He already has a relationship with De Ligt. If he's fit, I'm not sure what his fitness status is at the moment, so this might be not even on the table. He might not be in contention based on his fitness, but if he was fit, then there can't be too many qualms there playing him alongside a player that he'll know quite well from Bayern Munich. Then lastly, looking at the Fulham game, you're looking at the threat Fulham can pose. They've got a lot of good players there. They've built a very good, exciting team under Marco Silva. They're going to cause teams damage this season. The one thing that does worry me, it's just that debut impact that Emile Smith-Rowe is inevitably going to have. I think we're going to have to outscore Fulham. There's going to be a Smith-Rowe debut goal. You obviously don't want it to be the case, but we could be in our absolute prime under Sir Alex Ferguson, and you're looking at the opposition and they've got a new debutant with a big reputation there. They're probably going to score against us. It's just one of those things that seems to happen. I say it just always seems to happen to United, but truth be told, if you're the opposition and that's the other team, you always feel like it's going to happen to you. And Smith-Rowe's already got a couple of goals in pre-season, so I feel that's going to happen. But my prediction is going to be 3-1, maybe 4-1. Maybe 3, only because we haven't looked like we're going to score a lot of goals in the last couple of games. If Rasmus was fit, that might be a little bit different, but I think the goals will come. Wouldn't surprise me even if Fulham took the lead, but no, I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to Manchester United. Next up, just a quick one on Wayne Rooney and his first game at Plymouth. There's been some weird criticism, again, some proper online criticism. Plymouth lost 4-0 in their first game of the season away to Sheffield Wednesday. This is a team who avoided relegation essentially by a point last season. I mean, they're decent goal difference in comparison to Birmingham, I think, so you could say, okay, by a couple of points, but that means he hasn't got a lot to work with, and you come in first game with, yes, okay, you want to see your team do better. It was an away game too. Yes, you've lost 4-0, but already it's, all the jibes are right about Rooney and his ability. It might transpire that Plymouth have a terrible start to the season, and yes, he's gone by Christmas, but this shouldn't be the story at all. When he came into Birmingham, it's a difficult situation. He joined partway through a season, and he hasn't had an easy start to his managerial career. He has taken on some challenges, probably challenges that haven't worked in his favour. But the criticism already, it doesn't bode well for him. It really doesn't. It's silly, and it doesn't make a lot of sense after just the first game of the season. I haven't seen the game myself, so maybe they were really bad. But even so, let them settle down, give them some time to bed in. There was a team that just about avoided relegation last season, so you're not going to necessarily see you wouldn't expect to see a massive turnaround really quickly. If this is still going on sort of into October and the results are, pretty much the same, then okay, I can understand the criticism starting, but one game in, it really doesn't bode well. Finally for today, very much looking forward to the third kit announcement tomorrow. I believe it's one of my favourite. I think it's going to be the first kit I buy in. I think the last one I bought was the first Adidas kit after we moved back to Adidas. I think that was the last time I bought a kit. I'm not like buying them under the Glazers, so I'm actually quite looking forward to a kit announcement for the first time in a while. The home kit's looking quite good this season too. The away one's quite sharp as well. It's probably one of the first seasons for a while where they've done pretty well. The home kit last year wasn't great at all. The green and white one was all right, but this year I think they've done really well. I know kits are quite a divisive topic, so it'd be interesting to see what we get in the comments about the kits. You can literally look at any sort of kit announcement and you'll get a number of people saying something's fun. This isn't just United, but across the board, it's fantastic. And the person underneath thinking it's the worst thing they've ever seen. So, yeah, let us know your thoughts on the new kits for this season. But anyway, that is the last of the show for today. A very first Manchester United show you've only come to hear United, presented by Off Your Soccer. I will see you all soon. Thank you.